welcome to Agile World. How are you, Carl?
I'm great, thanks. I have a question from a viewer. It's an invisible question. It's on the back of my hand. Uh, it's probably the viewer is me, which is that stack of lollipops. Are they real? And have you actually eaten them all? It's just the front
Right.
that pretends to be real.
They are real. They're not squishy. It is dusty because I'm not eating them.
So they're vintage lollipops.
They are vintage
Okay.
lollipops. They're not that old. They are real. And no, I'm not eating them that much. And if we can get 10,000 views on this, I'll give it to somebody. How's that?
What one lollipop?
I will give the whole batch of lollipops if we get 10,000 views on this within 6 weeks. There we go.
There's a challenge. Okay.
There's a challenge. I will post it to them. They will get it as a gift because I'm not eating them. So.
Okay, well, maybe you can send some to Jill. Hi, Jill.
Yes. Hi, Jill. So we have Jill back. Thank you very much. So we met Jill a couple of weeks ago with the UK news group ABC and with Jacob and
Truth Sayers
as well, which I recommend you follow all of them. Thank you very much for coming back. How are you?
No, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be back.
So today is actually going to be focused on you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I know, I feel last time was a lot easier because I was told what I was going to talk about by my boss.
You're not allowed to let the secrets out. It's all natural.
So obviously this time around, because we were talking at the end of the last recording about, is there anything that any of us wanted to share out? And I was like, oh, actually, I would love to talk about something. So just to probably give a bit of background from me, so I'm Australian, as you could tell by the rich accent.
Honestly, I couldn't tell. I thought you were from East London.
I get told I'm New Zealand. People say, "Are you New Zealand?"
That's the wind up between Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
You get each accent and you claim the other one is the other.
Yeah, I think the jury's out on who gets upset the most.
It's similar in the UK. You never ever tell somebody who is from Newcastle and say they're from Sunderland or the other way around. I learned that the very, very hard way to never do that.
No.
You're all Southerners to me.
So I moved over to the UK in 2011, and I fell into tech and in delivery. And for the last 10 years, I've worked across BBC and News UK and other companies in tech, and been doing delivery and built up to portfolio. And the thing that I want to come and talk about today is this idea that I have been thinking about for a long time. Pretty much roughly not long after I moved over here, when I kind of had obviously that culture shock of, the things I say and how I act, and it's not quite the same, and I'm upsetting people, and so I started on this journey of kind of wanting to understand me so that I could help others understand who I was and why I said the things I said, or just because things are, I don't learn that way, so can we do it another way? And it's turned into, well, it was an article because I just thought, let's just get the idea out there, and then it was a talk, and now it's a fully fledged 6-week course called Leading from the Middle. So it's a course where we basically delve into the great circle of life, and we talk about how we're all leaders, no matter what role we're in the great circle of life. And we basically go through understanding how, unconscious bias, the language we use, how we all learn differently, being mindful of people's mental health, being self-aware within ourselves, and, building the bridges to bring everyone together to meet in the middle. Because I kind of realized as I was going through my career, particularly when I started out as a project manager, because I'd started off just kind of understanding me. And then when I stepped up finally after a few years and started leading teams and leading change in the departments and that, I started Googling what leadership meant, because people were saying different things. And I was like, they talk about leadership as if they're like some CEO or CTO or some big influencer. And I'm like, but I'm leading a team. I have no influence. I have zero influence. And yet I'm expected to lead this team, shape them, give them the right direction, and I'm bringing all these people together. And I was very conscious of who I was and the example I was setting. And And so, and then I started going to talks and conferences, and people would talk, like dance around basically the human element, which is that we're all human, and that we're all different and we're all unique, and we all bring our own unique like skill set and, you know, our upbringing and our experiences and hopes and dreams and all that kind of influence us as well. So I then was like getting really frustrated because I thought people would be like, oh, well, you're not a leader. And I'm like, but I am a leader. I am doing all of this change. Or, you know, I have helped someone get promoted because they came to me for support and advice. And so, and also it helps me as well, because again, I was having a lot of, I don't want to say issues, but particularly because I am Australian and it's such a different culture to the UK.
So what do you mean by leader? Because that's, you know, saying we're all leaders is a nice statement, but what does it mean? I mean, what makes you I mean, what is a leader, first of all? Because I think everyone's got this impression it's someone with a big hat, from somewhere, or like distance or skill. Or what is a leader?
So a leader is someone who we all lead without authority. So we're all driving it, and we do that through the human element, which is understanding our unconscious bias, the language we use, you know, understanding that people learn differently and being open and adaptable. So if you're open and adaptable to people around you and they are to you, you're influencing each other to reach that common goal. So we're all leading because we are able to build those bridges to come together, no matter where we are in the great circle of life, as I like to call it, because we are constantly, you know, it doesn't matter if you're in a development team, like if you're asked to build something, you know, that idea of what you're building doesn't change, and the code you write doesn't change. How the code's written is written by a human being. So we, like, to me, a leader is just because we're all human and we think about the human. So
what you're saying is that each individual creates the culture. It's not something that's set from above that everyone has to comply to.
No.
I love how you say about people's learning as well. So I regularly mentioned I'm dyslexic, and I found out later on in life. And the first thing I had to realize was the way that I learn is very different to others. And I think more and more people need to be open, but also be able to understand what is their learning technique. You know, I struggled with a lot of things at a younger age because I never personally realized it. And I reckon I would have been able to do so much more, or I wouldn't have shied away from so many things if I understood my learning technique.
I'm the same. Like I went to university, I started 3 degrees and I didn't finish any of them. And it was just because that's not how I learn. I'm a doer. I need to be like hands-on doing it that way. And I've had a lot of arguments over the years where I've been asked to go on courses and get certifications, and I've just flatly refused because I know that how they ask those questions at the end, my brain doesn't work that way. My brain doesn't understand how that stuff is, you know, to me, it's too gray. Like one word changes and it apparently means something different. I'm like, no, it's either one or the other. And, you know, so I've probably even been held back in my career a bit because I haven't been able to show I can do certain things because I haven't had the certificate. Like I've even had someone say to me, well, you didn't go to Oxford and Cambridge, so you'll never get a career in this bit. I'm not joking.
That's brilliant.
You know what? I've been in the same situation as you. I've been consulting for many years now, and I've had some clients when I've openly admitted I am dyslexic, and I've had some clients, and I'm not going to name who they are, they've actually gone, well, we're paying you this amount, so you should be able to do this. And it's like, well, I am dyslexic. Sometimes I need a bit of a hand. I've got tools and things like that. And they're like, yeah, no, actually, we should be paying you this amount of money for the job you do because you're not very good at this bit. And it's like, well, that's only a very small percentage. You know, I've improved on my communication skills to be better than my spelling and grammar. I've even had people say, because I never went to university, it's like, well, you know, why didn't you go to university? I've got a really good valid reason why I didn't, and I'm quite happy I didn't. It's fine. But I
used to not tell people that I started 3 degrees because I was made to feel embarrassed by it. And I wasn't embarrassed by it, but just to save the conversation. Whereas eventually I just got to the point where I went, no, I'm going to just totally own this now, because I basically was like, I'm not conforming. I'm going to just rewrite the rules and expectations. And actually, that's kind of why I started wanting to talk about it, because I went, it can't just be me who has these things, like even my own mental health, which is why mental health is also is one of those as well. I'm like, I know my mental health has impacted my job or how people have spoken to me, and that's or like I've been held back by something. But equally, if I haven't felt great, I've seen that impact my work, and obviously I've been treated a certain way. And that's not to say it's still both sides, like it's still on me to kind of manage that. But equally, there needs to be some mindfulness of, oh, they're not feeling great. What can we do to just make them feel a bit more just supported? Because if you did that, people will, go, oh, okay, it's a safe space. I can, take the time and I can relax a bit more. Because again, people come in going, oh my God, I've got to like be on form every single day. So otherwise I don't get into trouble. So
providing that environment really for people.
Yeah.
And people are different, and it's okay to be different.
Yeah. So that's yes.
So is this kind of herd mentality that you're hitting up against then, that you have to be like us to work with us? Is that?
I don't think it's a herd mentality, but I've personally experienced, not through everybody, but like I've had managers, or you've hit someone a bit higher up and they're just set in their expectations of ways, and that they're just like, I've had a manager where they've said I've not been performing, but not to me, but to like, they'll go, oh, she's finally doing what I wanted to do, but I've never had that feedback from them. Or it's because they're expecting me to work like them. Like that's the other thing, that there is this expectation that people expect you to work how they work, and then they go, well, you're not working how I want to work you to work, so you're not ready to be promoted yet. And I'm like, well, I still will get to the same point as you, like I'll still get the same outcome. I'm just going to do it this way and not this way. Like and again, I found that also just very frustrating, because I went, I can still do this. Like again, you then start to doubt yourself. You're like, well, can I actually do this job? Like
So one of my mentors years ago said to me, Carl, how do I get to Edinburgh Castle? And I go, you go this, and then it said, while I was talking, which I thought was really rude, turned around to someone else and said, how do I get to Edinburgh Castle? And they started giving a different route. And he turned back to me and said, Carl, do I still get to Edinburgh Castle? I said, well, you do, but there's different speeds and different, and I think, but yes, you still get this. That's all I'm asking. That's all I care about is getting, and most executives should really only care about getting to their targets. It's when they get into micromanagement that they actually destroy the ways of working around them, because they try and make copies of themselves and other people. And it's just horrific.
And I definitely see that in agile teams. Like I've had people who go, the whole department has to work this way and exactly this way. And I'm a big advocate of, just let the teams work how they want to work, whatever work, like each product itself is different in how they need to work their ways of working. As long as they're improving on it and you can see that they're delivering, doesn't matter how they do it. Like,
I mean, true agile is managed chaos.
Yes.
That's the way I think of agile, is because really, if you are a scrum master, your job is to facilitate everyone's diverse ways of working to get to the end point, or to get to the next increment or sprint. You're not really focused on how did they do that, because actually you can't replicate people. You can't scale a human being, and you can't scale a team, because it's a unique microcosm of behaviors.
Yeah. I always say the biggest variable is people.
Yeah.
Because you can't, again, we're all unique. We all have our own skill set and its strengths and weaknesses. Like I've even found, if I know my weaknesses, I've partnered with people who have them as their strengths. And as much as I still get frustrated because either I can't do it or I just wish, it'd be done a certain way, at least I know that, again, we are taking advantage of that, and we're going to deliver something even more remarkable because we're both leveraging what, our strengths are.
That's amazing collaboration as well. You understand to be able to understand your weaknesses, it means that you can improve more on your strengths, but then also you can collaborate with others to be able to help you with your weaknesses. And I think that's great. And this is a breath of fresh air, because everything that you're explaining, there's so many people out there that have experienced very, very similar situations, but it's not something that a lot of people are confident enough to be vocal about. And it's something that should be vocal.
And I totally agree, because I've done a lot of coaching over the years, and I'm, and even when I was like line managing, or not line managing, but like had development teams, as much as I wasn't line managing them, like all the skills was around the soft skills or the people skills. Like I used to get a lot of the, the apprentices or the graduates come into my team. So they're literally fresh out of university, or they're training scheme, and I would spend all my time actually getting them to figure out how to have difficult conversations, how to identify, how people might be thinking or working or why they reacted that way. And, and that's why, again, I kind of got more and more into, oh, maybe I should write about this, or maybe I should, do a talk on this. And, because I kept just hitting that wall of like, it cannot just be me. And I keep talking to people and they all seem to like the idea, but also just seem to go, yes, that's what we do. Particularly in delivery, all we do is talk to people, and herd people together.
So what does your course do? Does it, the first instance seems to be about cognition and discovery and understanding self. Do you then lead people into mechanisms to cope, or do you, how what's the dynamic that you're trying to create?
So there's six modules or 6 building blocks, and they're building blocks because one impacts the other. So the first one is unconscious bias. So we do a lot of activities around understanding what unconscious bias is, how that impacts us, how we can identify it. Like at the end of the course, you'll ineffectively have like a human element toolkit, which you can use, or you'll have put ideas in on how you can adapt and work with others and identify, different things. So you start off with unconscious bias because you don't know what you don't know. And that is something that's set in childhood and set, and you don't realize. And that impacts everything else. So like our language and how we speak to people is impacted by our unconscious bias that we don't realize. So the next one's language. And we not just look at like the history of languages, we look at like how words mean different things, and we build out your own dictionary, because I have my own dictionary. For example, I love to say I'm waffling on. And that is my choice of words. So I see that as in my dictionary, and that is unique for me. And I think, again, part of it's not just identifying yourself and where you need to improve on, but also being okay with who you are. So understanding the value of you. So we do languages. The next one is learning, because again, how people speak, impacts how people learn. So if you speak, you're explaining something one way, as Carl, you just gave an amazing example on Edinburgh, like one explain one way and one explain another way. And, again, our learning's impacted by that. And then the fourth building block is mental health, because unconscious bias, language and learning, depending on how that's all been presented to you, can impact your mental health. And we look at ways to understand, a stress bucket and how maybe identify our own stress bucket, but also to think about what might be in other people's stress bucket so that you can just be more mindful. We think about those mindfulness techniques. Then the fifth one is all about self-awareness. So we take the last four modules, building blocks, and we look at ourselves. So we reflect on each one, but then we really reflect on us, but also we celebrate us. So we understand what our saboteurs are. We understand, what are our personal values that are most important to us, because they're all different. And we also look at how you introduce yourself to people. So like I've learned over the years that if I start off with saying, hi, I'm Gill, I can be very direct and a bit abrupt, but I say it with love. I really care, so that way when I do it, it's completely disarming, because they just go, oh, she's not upset, or she's not being rude. She's told us this is what she's like. She's told us she's just saying it because she cares. She really wants us to do better. And it just makes my life a hell of a lot easier, and I don't get into trouble. So
you've not been like that with us. We must bring a different side.
No, when I get into work mode, I can be just like, this is the problem. We need to do this. Stop doing that. Like I don't do the politics of it. So I'm a lot more just like upfront and honest. I'm a very honest person. So, but we also look at like what you won't share out with people. So like if you have mental health issues, you need to be aware of what you won't share out so that you know how you can manage all of that. And then the final one is all about the building of bridges. And that's about how recognizing that, you are important and that you yourself have managed to influence and drive change without any authority, and that you bring something to the table and that you can build bridges. And we do that through the great circle of life. Like, as much as I think this idea really started about 10 years ago, I think it more started as a kid, because when I saw The Lion King and you hear the whole Mufasa to Simba and the great circle of life.
Where's my puppy?
Oh,
I do it all the time with her. Where?
And it's because whenever and the thing why I loved that film so much was because it told me that it didn't matter where I was in life, I was important. I had something to bring to the table. And so we draw out our own circles of life, in effect. And I give examples on how we do that. I also have written, because I'm a very creative person. I've written a mystery that it runs alongside it. So not only do we have activities in that throughout each module that's explicit for each module, but throughout the whole thing, you get a mystery that you have to solve, which we then also look at the end. We look at like why circles of life may fail. We look at what good looks like. And then at the end, I also offer 3 mentoring sessions for free so that I can continue to help people on their journey, in effect. And that's kind of it. I'm sure there's so much more stuff I could say about, but that's the course.
You don't want to give too much away.
No.
Interesting. Is there a type of is there a type of person or a type of role or a type of, position for someone to go for this? Is there any recommendations, or this just open for everybody?
So in general, it's open to anybody. I don't want to disclude anyone, but it's definitely for people who are in a lot of people management roles, who are dealing with people every day. It's also for people who may be feeling stuck in their role and not feeling like they're getting anywhere or wanting to grow. Because I've seen just a lot over the years that even for myself, that the part of the reason I haven't managed to make it to the next thing, or people are a bit stuck, is because of either the situation they're in, or just, again, they need to just grow a bit more and need a bit more help, and maybe, again, figuring out how to talk to people. And it's just for people who, who are in the middle of their career, or wanting to kind of look at that leadership style a bit more, or to me, it's open for anyone. But it is definitely for people who, like, if there is, I'm not expecting CEOs to come or anything like that. I'm expecting more people who either starting out or in the middle of their, like, in that middle management, in effect. Because again, that, like, the whole leading for the middle, the point of it is, I was like, you not only lead a team, you're influencing those at your level, and you're then having to influence up. Like, any program manager alone will know what that feels like, in having to influence like deadlines and everything else. So to me, it's just anyone who's, in that middle management.
They want to take that next step. They want to go to that next step, take that next leap.
Have you seen it in context? Because really what you're proposing would empower the middle echelons to bypass and overcome neuro-linguistic programming. Because that's essentially what you're doing, is you're giving people the power to, because I've had training to not respond to NLP. And I've sat through work where people thought that they've got me doing their job for them, and then appeared at the major presentation without their slides for them, because I never agreed to do anything for them, and they've taken it in the neck. So you're giving people the capacity to not take on things that aren't theirs. You're giving them the capacity to focus on how to make things work with the people they're working with, and how to push forward a wider agenda than just doing the job. Are you prepared for the impact of that?
I'm going to say I don't think so, or I don't know, purely because when I wrote this article, like, I've been thinking about it for years, and in 2020, when we were in lockdown again, I was like, what am I going to do? So I decided to write about it, and I literally then went, oh, that's it. And I just went, yep, it's on Medium, whatever. And I didn't think about it for another, like, a year. And then I went to an unconscious bias course, which I'd done one before years ago, but I thought, new things. And then after listening to that, I was like, oh, there's something else. And then I went, talk, like, I've literally, if you'd said to me 2 years ago, I'd be here talking to you about this course I've launched and everything else. I was actually saying it to someone last night. I said, I wouldn't have believed it. I said, the fact is, I can see it being more. Like, I did a bit of a dry run on some of the modules with people, and they were like, I still feel like we're skipping, we're just touching the surface of it. And I went, I can see, like, unconscious bias. There's so much stuff we don't talk about. I could do 4 weeks on this and 2 weeks on that. And, same with mental health. So I for whatever reason, I could see this really growing into a big thing, which is scary, because it's definitely not where I saw it 2 years ago.
Well, you're leading by example. You're taking the next big step. You're using your own resources. So if this is going to sell it for anything, you are using your own resources to take the next big step and the leap.
And I would definitely say, just from my own experience, that over the years, the more I've learned about myself, and the more I've learned how to deal with situations, how to cope with situations, how to deal with different people, a lot of what I like, I'll give loads of examples. Like my closet is littered with skeletons of failures of like where I've hit problems or whatever. And some of it's mine, some of it's someone else, some of it's both of us. So, you know, I definitely like really do share out. I'm really honest about, you know, just my own journey, just because again, I think that's important. It helps it make relatable. It shows, like, again, I found the more I kind of started talking to people about this, the more everyone, you know, like we did just at the start, I said something and you went, yeah, same here. Carl did the same thing, you know, like I just think it just, and I want to build out a community around it as well. I want us all to kind of have each other's back. So if we are having problems, you can reach out to anyone, you know, or even me and kind of go, I'm having this problem, you know, and we can talk about what we can do about it. Because I think particularly with the world we're living in, we need that sort of kindness and that support as well. So I feel I'm very weirdly passionate about it. I never thought I would feel so passionate about it.
Do you know what? You're one to watch, and we will definitely, as Agile World, will be following you on this journey. Thank you very much for your time. Keep up to date with us. We'll keep checking in. We will grab you and bring you back on the show.
I'm sure.
Absolutely.
This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.